Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money in the Law, My FM 101.3. Here with your host, Jay Marsden. He's from the Marsden Law Group. I'm John Drowan from Main Effort Financial. We have the Holliston Hub executive producer, Tom Harmon, here as well. And we're back. We've had a little bit of a sabbatical for a couple of weeks. Had to make some trips, take care of some business.
Yeah.
But we're back full force. We're still. This is airing on, this will be Saturday the 1st of February.
Oh, it's already here.
So January is in the books.
Nice, love it.
Which
good.
Love it, and except I feel like that it was Christmas like 8 minutes ago.
I know.
So January went by.
And you know what's funny? You feel like that at the end of January, but there's that like 1 or 2 week window after the holidays where it just drags by. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're on the cusp of February and you say to yourself, where did it go? And January, a notoriously long month, and you say to yourself, where did it go?
It's notoriously long.
Yeah. And then February's going to fly by because it's short.
Well,
and you get the holiday in there. You got
what it is?
Vacation week if you're in the school
Well, it's
business.
the spring semester, right? It's the spring, and you know, for everybody from when we're all back in school, spring always went by faster than the fall.
Always.
Like just you blink your eye and bam, and then somebody invented this thing called spring break, which was right. And I don't know what the origin of the spring break was.
You remember, you're so exhausted from studying and carrying those books around. Your color's a little bit, like your pallor's a little off from all the time you've spent in the library.
Yeah.
Your vitamin D levels are down. So you need to get out.
And it's cold.
Yep.
And it's snowy.
Yeah.
And it's dark all the time.
Yeah. So you need to get on a bus. Because if this was back in the day when you and I went to school, there'd be a brochure or a flyer stuck on a wall somewhere, and some guy named Tom, who lived on campus somewhere, who could barely get himself to class, had been tasked with building a charter trip down to Florida. Yeah. And you could swing in, and for $50... They'd put you on.
Which you were like, I don't know, because you're going to your old man for that.
Oh, yes, yeah. And you'd say,
and that wasn't. You didn't come in cold with that request.
No. And the old man right away knows exactly what the request is for. He's like, so I'm going to give you $50 for you to spend a week at some bacchanal down in, where are you going now?
Go to Daytona Beach, Dad.
And maybe
Daytona.
It was Daytona, maybe it was, then they all got popular at different levels, like it was either Daytona, it was Panama, depending on where you went to school, maybe you were doing a Lake Havasu trip. I don't know what was going on.
Wait,
but
when did you go? You went to Panama?
Panama Beach.
Oh, Panama.
Yeah, that's Panama. No.
Country of Panama.
No, we stayed on this side. We stayed on this side of the line.
Have you guys ever seen the canal? This is crazy.
By the way, for the record, I never went on spring break.
Never.
No. I went home and worked. I usually tapped out most of the kitty by mid-semester, and so everyone else is running off to go tear it up, and I'm like, I'm going to be...
this explains a lot.
I'm going to be working this week. I'm making up for it now, but I'm working this week.
I was going to say, this explains kind of where we are now, kind of where, the level of excitement that you get when you are in some sort of festive situation.
Striking distance of a trip down
Jay
south.
is fired up tonight. Well, it's kind of spring break for him.
He's making up for lost time. He's still making up for lost time.
He's 30 years out of college, but it still haunts him.
I still wake up screaming. Yep.
I'm picturing like you go, because the way you found out about the trip is one of those those 8x11 pieces of paper with like the phone numbers that you can rip off the bottom.
Just tear it off.
You're holding that in front of your father.
Have to go, and then Tom and I were joking before the show. You'd have to go back to your room where your phone was, right?
If you had a phone in your room.
That's right. Get on the phone, call across campus, some sketchy dude, be like, yeah, come on down. It's $150 deposit. That holds your seat on the bus, right? And then, and think about it, right? A bus to Florida, right? Like you're going to spring break. You're standing at the bus, right? You're ready to tear the cover off the ball. You jump on the bus, woo! Yep. And then you're like, hold on.
Where are we? We're in Delaware.
We get 26 more hours of this, right? Hold on, right? Yeah. I've been out of Miller Lite since Attleboro.
Boy, do I have to go to the bathroom. When are we stopping? Oh, we're going to stop right after we go over the bridge. Which bridge? The Delaware Bridge.
Yep. And then you were usually, when you get down there, you were usually at something like the Four Seasons or some Four Seasons-like type of accommodations.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Right?
Yeah, you're definitely in a 5-star.
Yep.
Nothing lower than 4, right?
And when you got there, by the way, you were the guest. You were the customer. So you're expecting where's my, I want to be like, where's the breakfast buffet? Where's the, I want the whole shoot match.
Right, and as you're checking into whatever the establishment, whatever the hotel, the guy that's looking at you, there's a manager that's behind that counter that's just saying, they're taking bets right now as to when they're going to throw you out of this hotel. The guy's like, I'll give you 72 hours.
Yeah,
He goes,
they get a bingo.
I'll take
They get a
that.
bingo card for everything. First one in the pool after hours. First one to fall off a balcony. First one to throw up in the pool. First one to throw up in the hot tub. First one to get the cops called on them. Like there's a whole,
I mean,
Could you imagine? Like, I'm in the hospitality industry and I'm working down in it's like Lord of the Flies.
But you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're going to go bankrupt.
I know. The $4 billion
You got to
that comes
do
with
it.
it. I know.
You got to do it. And as kids come in and they're like, all right, well, listen, just give us your dad's credit card. We're going to put it over here.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you're going to get it
It's
back.
safe. It's safe.
It's
It's
probably
safe.
safer here than
Yep,
with you.
that's actually
and
a
they'll
good
talk
point.
you into
Yep,
that. Yeah.
Yep.
Look at you talking about. I've never been on spring break. Have you ever been to Have you ever visited Florida before? Oh wait, yeah. You go to Florida.
I've been there a little bit.
More.
I've been there a little bit.
More
I've been
than
there a little bit.
more than the average bear.
Yeah, I've been there a little bit.
Tommy, how are you doing? Did you go on spring break?
It's coming up. It hasn't
Miami
gone
back
yet.
in the day.
Miami.
Of course he went to Miami.
Oh,
Playa.
Miami. That right. That's that's not even spring break. That's a different level.
Please.
That's a
next
different
level.
league of
That's
spring
like,
break.
That's like he's Mr. Miami Vice.
Right.
Can you see him? Can
Right.
you see him with the suit, the T-shirt,
Yep,
the
he's-
short?
yep,
He's
he's-
just ripping it down there. Velvet rope and everything, bottle service
That's
behind
right.
the velvet rope.
He's got a little extra sunscreen on because Tom, of course, not unlike you. He's a fair-skinned Irishman.
Oh, yes,
right?
that's right.
So
That's why you do well in the bars.
Yep,
That's why you do well in the bars.
That's
It's
why
safer there.
That's why you do well.
His phone is just a constant stream of ex-Cuban girlfriends
Yeah.
from his time down in Miami. Right. That's all. He's living the Latin
Just saying,
lifestyle
when
down
are you
there.
coming back?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. You didn't know Tom was bilingual.
That's
he spoke.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
He speaks fluent
Yeah.
Spanish.
He
That's
speaks
right. We didn't
fluent.
know any of that. Yep.
Now we know.
He was totally immersed in the South Florida culture. I love
Miami.
it. I love it. God.
Miami is it is true. Miami's different than Fort Lauderdale. It's
Oh, yeah.
different than Daytona.
Yep.
It's a different league.
Yep.
I mean, you have to show up with your A game.
Oh yeah. You don't just show up and wander around with your
No.
with your Crocs on and
No.
your jorts.
Yeah.
with your folder out to say this nightclub seems like it's got a lot going on in here. Mary, you want to walk in here and see if we can get a margarita?
Yeah.
It's a little different.
I can remember, not to tell war stories, but Hurricane Andrew.
Yeah.
One of the, when we were down for Hurricane Andrew, this is when the Dade County kind of got demolished and much of Miami was kind of beaten up. We had one night of R&R.
Nice.
And they brought 3 buses
Yep.
of soldiers, and we didn't have any, we had to leave quick, so we were in uniform, right? In uniform, 3 buses of soldiers, and they said, you have 4 hours.
Yep.
On Miami Boulevard.
Yep.
And they said, go get them. Oh, by the way, no drinking,
Of
right?
course
So
not, of course not.
so guys are like, yeah, of course we're not going to drink, right?
Yeah.
So without getting into too much detail, we walk into the first bar I walk into, my commander and my sergeant major, they turn and they look at me and they're like, and they have a drink in their hand and they have this kind of guilty look in their hand. And I was like, that's all I needed to see. I left that bar and then went south.
Yep, of course. Yep.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, it's good stuff down there.
Good
It's
time.
Good stuff down there.
All right,
So what's on your mind? What do you want? So you get notes here? You want to talk about?
I did a little background,
right.
a little prep for today. So I was, I have some. We have everybody has like some continuing education
Yes,
that you
they
have
do,
to do.
yes,
So
yeah.
in the middle of my continuing my strive to get better, this was one of the topic was estate tax or estate planning
There you go. Nice.
and estate planning. And one of the things that I found intriguing when we talk about this is just kind of some of the basics of the basic estate plan, but also the estate tax, right? And we kind of fluff off estate tax, or we
Right.
kind of say, well, most people that we know aren't going to pay a federal estate tax. But then there's the Massachusetts the Massachusetts estate tax. So I wanted to just kind of review that a little bit, just to make everybody aware of it, and to understand that, and we've kind of gone over this before, where you say, look, the Massachusetts estate tax it's there. Many people will fall into that. Will have to kind of pay attention to that. But at the same time, it's not a game changer, right? It's not going to be like this. But just understanding kind of what it is, because people they ask about it, right?
Yeah.
They ask about it, and it's complicated, but at the same time, it's not that complicated.
Right.
So, and then I was writing down a couple of terms, so there may be a quiz later on. I'm going to quiz if there's any estate planning attorneys that are here. There may be a quiz just so you understand, just so everybody knows that Jay knows what he's talking
Maybe.
about. So
Maybe. Time will
see.
tell.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to kick it off with that and
Love it.
and
Love
see and plus it was something I know you liked. It's because it's important, right?
Well,
It's
it is
important to talk
important.
about now.
Yeah, it's important to have the conversation,
Yep.
right? And then, of course, that opens up a whole bunch of like paths where this thing could go, because you say to yourself, and we've talked about this on the show before, where we've said, look, clients come in all the time, and they sit down, and we have a big, long conversation, and we talk about, that the federal estate tax threshold is this, where it goes, who knows, especially with the turnover in Washington. We don't know what's going to happen. And then part two of it is, but then there's a Massachusetts problem, or potential issue, right? And first thing people say is, how do I avoid the Massachusetts estate tax? We jokingly say, well, move out of Massachusetts.
There's one. Yeah, that's one.
That's your first solution, right?
Yeah.
There you go, right? Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. For some people it is. Some people would say, you know what? We were thinking of making a move anyway. This could be part of that discussion. And for a lot of people, it's real. I mean, they will literally decide that this is what I want to do. So I get it. That makes perfect sense. Other people will say, no, this is really important to me. We need to address it. And then we'll talk about what addressing it looks like. And then other people will say, let's talk about it in a little bit more detail, because I'm not sure we're that worried about it.
One thing is that what happens a lot is that people hear things, right?
Sure.
They'll hear like their buddy will be like, hey, I was talking to my guy, and my guy said that I got to be really conscious about the mass estate tax, and you hear these terms that you're maybe not necessarily familiar with, so they come up and you're like, wow, and then you kind of get anxious about it, and
Sure.
that happens with how many times do you get calls or do you get people ask you questions like, listen, I don't really know what this is, I don't really know what a trust is, can you kind of like break this down?
I was talking to friends. I was talking to a colleague. I was talking to family.
Right.
And this was the buzz.
Yeah, and so just to kind of understand, like when you talk about your estate, like what does that mean? Like when you say, well, you got to watch out, you got to estate, but you may not even understand kind of what comprises your estate, like what does and what doesn't, and then and then there's all, as Jay said, there's a bunch of different things that can happen. There's different ways you can kind of position stuff or move yourself if it's something that you really want to avoid. But the most important thing is you got to understand it, right?
Yeah.
You got to get your head around it and understand it for what it is and what it's not, because oftentimes people will be like, I'm just gonna, they get hung up on this stuff, like, I don't want to pay any more taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. And we've said 1,000 times, you don't want to let taxes wag the dog.
No.
No. Taxes are you don't ignore them, but at the same time, you don't let them drive the train.
Well, it's funny you said that. When I was in law school, that's when there was a lot of talk about getting rid of the estate tax, or the estate tax could go away. And I felt like at the time, I remember saying to a professor of mine, and I said, look, if the estate tax, because all the classes at the time, especially when you're talking about the estate planning and the kind of coming through the system as an estate attorney, there's a lot of it's tax driven. And so I remember going to my professor and saying to my professor, I feel like I'm getting in the buggy business, like at the age of the iron horse,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm trying to sell, I'm going to put out this brand new, hook this buggy up to your horse, and then some guy rides up in his brand new, Ford Model
right.
T, and I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss the boat here? Am I like 10 years too late?
You got to be careful.
Yeah, and
These
I said,
taxes.
yeah, that's what I said. I said, so I'm really concerned about it. And he goes, Jake, for 1 second, he goes, first of all, forget the whole tax thing. He goes, even if the estate tax goes away, let's just say it goes. He goes, a lot of this is about estate administration, right? So the tax issue is part of it. He said, but there's always the estate administration piece of the puzzle. So I say that because for everybody who thinks, oh, well, if the estate tax goes away, so do estate tax attorneys, or so do estate planning attorneys.
Right.
Not true, right? I mean, we're obviously going to, hopefully be hanging around for a little longer than that, at least another 10 or 13 years. After that, I don't really know what happens, but at least for something like that.
13,
right?
what a just odd random number.
So
I was counting 13s.
Oddly enough, you pick that number. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, let's make sure that we're all kind of working off the same set of facts, right? So the estate tax in Massachusetts doesn't kick in until your estate is over.
Wait. we're gonna let's dive into. Let's take a break.
All right, you wanna take a break?
Because I mean, you're gonna throw out some.
All right,
numbers.
go ahead.
Because
All
I know
right,
you're
go ahead.
full of them. I know you're full, and I got my numbers down here to check to make sure that you're right. All right. So before we get into the details, and they're important.
Sure.
I'm not saying that they're not important. Let's take a quick break. Everybody, take a deep breath. Right. Go get some coffee.
Yeah.
Right. Get your notebook. Get your notebook. You're gonna have to take a couple of notes on this.
Yeah. Sharpen your pencils.
But again, if you miss something or if you don't necessarily catch it on the first time around, you can always reach us at moneyinthelaw.net, ask a question.
You can always re-listen to the show.
Or you can always re-listen to the show, or you can just call one of us. All right.
Calls.
All right. Don't go away. We will be right back.
And we're back. My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John Drohan, Main Effort Financial. Tommy is on the bag today.
I just got pickpocketed.
And just got pickpocketed. All right.
I just got 3-card Montied from, oh my God, from McAuliffe. Tom McAuliffe.
He swapped out your pen.
He swapped. Look at this thing with the thing. You can't see it on TV.
Radio,
right?
Yeah.
It's shit. The thing's. I had a good pen, and he
did.
did.
$500 Mont Blanc.
He did. He just put his right. It was like a spy movie, right? Where they put the newspaper down and
he
they
does the same thing with a full beer. You don't even know it. He walks up, he pats you on the back, tells you how great he is to see you. He walks away with your full beer.
Look at this awful pen.
Yeah.
What is this?
That's great.
Right.
I love it.
Blue.
It
It's blue.
It doesn't even work.
It's a blue pen.
So we're talking estate taxes today, in addition to
Right
your
back
pen
into it.
challenges.
No, I got. Oh, Tommy, I got a pen.
What a guy.
Oh, it's a My FM pen. What?
Of course it is. There you go.
Yeah, right. All right, thank you. No,
You're almost even.
All
Almost
right,
even.
I'm gonna go see him later.
After the show. So we're talking about estate taxes. Talking about you kind of came in guns blazing. Very excited to talk about the topic on the heels of your continuing ed.
So the first thing is and I know you'll get a kick out of this. So as I'm reading some of the material, right?
Sure.
Some of the material.
I get the sense that you do your continuing ed much like I do, which is usually about as close to the deadline as you can.
No. I got plenty of time. Plenty of time.
That's why I didn't hear from you over the holidays, because you were locked down with some pajamas and a laptop.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm not going to bore you with where I was doing my continuing ed last night, but because that's a whole nother story.
Okay.
I'm a little tired today.
I bet.
I will. I had a sleep study last night.
Oh,
I mean,
that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, they were studying my sleep, and I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Love it.
So so when I was doing my reading, I said there's some important people that are involved in the entire estate planning and tax estate planning process, and they gave it, and it was in this order. There's 4 people. Four, right?
Yep.
So here they are. I think in priority order, and you're going to like this. So, who do you think's number 1? Anybody?
The advisor.
Wrong. The lawyer.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you're a lawyer.
I was going to say the client.
You're
That's always top of the list.
He's not.
All right.
No, that dude's not. He's not on the list.
All right.
So of course you're a estate planning attorney for all the right reasons, because
Obviously.
they're the ones who actually put where the rubber meets the road.
We did take a class or two.
Right. And well, they're the ones that make it real.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
We can do all. I mean, as a financial
them.
planner, I can do all the estate planning I want. Sure. At the end of the day, when that last will and testament goes to probate, and the judge says, "What the hell is this?" Then
John, can I get your bar number? Oh, I got all kinds of bar numbers for you.
No. Yeah. Well, remember that thing with Robert Shapiro and that thing I saw online? Yeah, he's like, yeah, that's not going to work here.
Not cool.
So first is your attorney.
Yeah.
Next, what do you think? Your accountant, right? Your accountant, and the description was, hey, your accountant knows your finances, knows your financial position, right? So I'm like, all right, well, that kind of makes sense.
Maybe.
So as I'm reading down, I'm like waiting. I'm waiting for me to get called, right? The next one, who do you think it is?
Oh gosh.
Well, put it this way: it wasn't your financial planner.
No. Okay.
It was your insurance agent.
Your insurance agent.
And I was like, of course it's your insurance
Written by
agent.
FINRA, brought to you by FINRA, brought to you by the insurance agent.
It was your insurance agent.
Sure.
And again, we give the insurance guys, we love to give them some grief. We love to talk about them. We love to tell them how great they are and how important they are. And right here, it's in this book, it says that the insurance guy, he is batting third. He's batting third in the lineup, right?
Who's batting cleanup?
Your financial planner.
Wow.
Or cleanup or last in this case. Right.
All right.
4 out of 4. So it's almost like if we don't get to him, you know what?
Yep.
It's not the end of the world. But first and foremost, at the top of the list was your attorney. So One of the things, and the reason for this is because your attorney is they're going to prepare all the documents, and they're going to make sure that everything that you do is by the letter of this new thing, that's this new invention that's called the law.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
right. Because there's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of interpretation of that going
Yes,
on these
there is.
days.
Yes, yeah.
But the law is the law, and so this is how it's going to. So the first thing when you're talking about your estate. Tell me, because this is what you guys do. When you're saying like, what is your estate? What entails the estate?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. It's everything that you own when you pass away, right? So you have a retirement account. That's part of what they would call your gross estate, right? You have a bank account. You have a checking account. You have a savings account. If you have a life insurance that you own at your death, the death benefit of that life insurance is included as part of your estate, something that a lot of people forget about. If you own real estate jointly, any asset you own jointly, half of that is considered to be part of your gross estate. So there's your gross estate, and let's not confuse that with your probate estate, which are the things that might need to go through probate. Your gross estate is basically
all your
just
stuff.
Pile it up on the table. What did you own at your death when you passed away?
And you brought up life insurance because life insurance is oftentimes people overlook it. So if I have a term life insurance policy, right?
Yeah.
And my term life insurance policy, the death benefit is $1 million.
Yep.
When I die, that is included in my gross estate.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yep.
And so let's say I have a couple life insurance policies, or let's say I have a life insurance policy through work. So when we're talking about estate planning, we're talking about the threshold of that if as long as I'm under, and we're talking about the mass estate, the state estate planning, estate tax right now, is that it's that $2 million threshold, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm talking about federal estate, then it's $13 million, 13.6, right?
Change, yep.
Yep. So $13,600,000.
Yeah, so for purposes of this discussion, which is basically talking about Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And to your point, right? You got $1 million life insurance policy that you bought to make sure that your kids were covered if something ever happened to you, and you have a piece of property and you got a 401k. You get there quick.
You're most likely, if you have a house around here, in the greater, kind of the Milford area, you're probably going to be north of $2 million.
You could get there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So first of all, it's important. So your estate is. So I have a question. So is there a valuation with respect to my property, meaning like the property that I own? So let's say I own 3 cars. Is that included in my gross estate?
Yeah.
So then how is that evaluated? That's I think it's important to understand.
So it's usually based on the valuation of those things that you own at your death, right? So for example, this is important. If you have a stock portfolio, mutual fund portfolio, whatever the valuation is on the date of your passing, your brokerage account's got $300,000 in it. It's $300,000 added to your estate, date of your death.
Yeah, but that's easy, right? That's easy. Yeah. But I'm talking about. So let's say I have some property. Let's say I own like some actual gold bullion or something like that. How is that? I mean, how is that reported with respect to estate tax? Like, or some kind of hard, like a commodity or something like that. There's not really a paper trail on it.
Well,
how do I know that?
If it's gold bullion that you own, you're talking about actual physical gold in your home.
Yep.
If you really wanted to get into it, you'd have to figure out how much it weighs, and then you have to figure out what the price of gold is that day, and then you scale it up, and then you say to yourself, all right, I own 15 ounces of gold on January 31st, and this is what gold was selling for that day. That's how much my gold is worth.
Do you have any gold?
I wouldn't tell you on this. I wouldn't disclose that on this radio show if I have gold.
It's funny because I'll have clients will tell me like, I'm thinking about buying some gold, and I'll be like, okay, right, okay there, rancher.
Well, as an advisor, I'm sure you get this all the time, where you'll be talking to your clients and you'll be making sure that when you're placing this happens, right? When you're placing trades in the commodity sector, you have to be very careful when those trades are made, because you don't want to inadvertently buy somebody $10,000 worth of gold and not recognize the fact that they don't want the gold shipped to them. They want to hold the gold at wherever the gold is held at Fort Knox
somewhere. Yeah.
So that's always something. So then sometimes people come in and say, I accidentally hit the wrong button and I got the gold shipped to me.
I got some gold in the mail.
Gold in the house. And so here it is. A truck shows up. A couple of guys get up with a two-wheeler. You order some gold. Here it is, right? And so you
Where do you want us to bury this?
Yes, that's right.
Right
so
there.
so you want to yes, I mean, so it's anything you own. It's anything you own. Right?
So that's my estate. So everything I own, all added up together to include my life insurance, death benefits, and there you go. So now, with respect to the Massachusetts estate tax, so I mentioned it earlier, but let's review it. So the threshold, the estate tax exemption threshold is $2 million.
Correct.
All right. So anything, if it adds up and it's under $2 million, then
cares.
this becomes academic. I don't have to file a return, right?
Nope.
There's
Nobody
no
cares.
MA 706 form or whatever it is, right? So I don't have to do a return. However, let's say that I add it all up and it's 2.5, or let's say $3 million for easy math. So $3 million is what my gross estate is. What am I paying Massachusetts estate tax on?
Everything over $2 million.
I'm paying Massachusetts estate tax on everything, right? Because once I go over that $2 million,
just what's over the $2 million.
So I'm paying estate tax on everything over, so on $1 million.
Correct.
Right. But now, with respect to that, so now I've triggered that estate tax. I've triggered that tax, and then there's a whole like kind of table that says, all right, here's the tax rates. But one of the things that's important, what I was learning in my continuing ed, is that there's some state exemptions that come along with that, right?
Yeah. If we're doing back of the napkin conversation,
Right.
That's one thing. But yes, this is where the accountant, second on the list, comes in. Because they would be filling out an M706 form, and they would sit down and they would go through the M706, and they would say, this is what your estate comes in at, here's where the deductions and the adjustments come in, and then here's the number that you actually have to pay an estate tax on.
So this is important, right? This to me, I found important because, especially for the clients who want to get into the details, who want to say, look, I just want to get this, I want to understand, and maybe they don't. But we feel like, and I'm sure you feel the same, sometimes it's important for you guys, even though I know you don't want to hear this, just understand this. So just so the next time you're at the barbecue or the next time you're sitting by the pool and someone's like, you better watch out about estate tax, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, understanding that, if that's my number, I'm $1 million over the threshold.
Sure.
And that's what I have to pay estate. There's going to be other adjustments. And this is kind of where the nitty gritty accountant complicated stuff happens, where it's not going to be just a blank, you got to pay 15 or 22% of that.
It's just like, it's as complicated as doing your own return, right? Like it's never, I made this much money and I owe this much money in taxes. It's never that. It's, I made this much money and then let's roll up our sleeves, put on the green visor and start taking away and chunking away at all these deductions to see what I really owe on.
And so the other kind of obvious important thing to take away from this is what? Is that when am I paying this estate tax? Who's actually paying it?
Well, it's due 9 months after the date of death.
Right.
And it's paid by the estate. So
who's not paying it?
Well, the person who dies is not paying it. Me, I'm not paying it. You're not paying
right.
it. Tom's not paying it. No, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So if I'm remember, this is my estate that's paying this, right? So again, some people, when they're, especially when you do this all the time, when I'm doing my estate planning, people will be like, well, I really, one of the main reasons I'm doing this is because I'm concerned about my legacy. I want to make sure that, all of my hard work, everything that I've accumulated and I've all my success and my accomplished, I want to pass this on to, to the next generation or to my heirs or to wherever I want to put it. But I want to make sure that it's done correctly. So,
well, if you're dealing with this, if you're the person who's the executor of the estate, there's a couple things to think about. When you retain the attorney who's on top of that list, you're going to find out a couple things. Am I being retained, when clients come to us, am I being retained just to get you appointed as the executor? Because that's it, right? That's our job. We got you appointed. Great. Fantastic. Appointment done. Here you go. Now you can go and do all the things you need to do.
So explain that. Give me some more detail. How does that work? So when because we're kind of just throwing this out there. So Who's the executor? What is that person?
Well, usually the person named in the will. If not the person named in the will, somebody's going to step up and say, look, I'm going to volunteer to see if I can get appointed as the executor so I can corral, this pile of things here that are here, right? Because remember, everyone has to remember you own stuff, right? And some of the stuff you have is going to go to who's ever the named beneficiary or the joint owner on that account. But some of us just own stuff, especially if you're not married, if you're single or you're divorced. Some people just own stuff that's in their name alone, right? I mean, we do a whole series on celebrity probate, right? And we talk about people like Prince, and we talk about Aretha Franklin. We talk about these people. And these are people who owned stuff in their own name when they died, and they didn't do any planning. And so if you own something by yourself, nobody knows what's supposed to happen to it. You walk down to and even this is for everybody. Your husband, your wife, they have a bank account at the bank. It's got 50 grand in it. They pass away. It's in their name alone. You walk into the bank is not going to give you the 50 grand.
They can't.
They can't. They won't. They're going to say to you, come back to me with a piece of paper signed by a judge that proves that you're the executor, that you're the person we should be listening to, and then we'll start taking our direction. And the direction is, I'll give you the money to put it in an estate account, and now you have a responsibility as the executor, right?
That's right. So understanding that the executor, that's kind of like the conductor, right? That's the orchestra conductor right now. It's not necessarily the executor. So you use the example of the bank account. The executor doesn't. It's not like, okay, I'm the executor of this estate. I need that 50 grand. It doesn't work like that, right?
Well, they'll give you a check. The check will be made out to the estate.
Yeah, it's not going to be made out to you.
No, that's right. That's right. And you'll stick that in a bank account, right? Yep. And you'll have this one estate account that will collect all this stuff. But if you are the one who's been appointed as the executor, what you need to have a discussion, what you need to kind of have some understanding of is, well, where are we going with this? Because when you get appointed as the executor, we talked about that. You have a 9-month window to get this estate tax return filed. So you want to find out when you hire an attorney, are you hiring me to get appointed as the executor? Because I'm not a tax person. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the tax return. I'll get you appointed as the executor, but either you're going to have to go find a tax person in your capacity as the executor to do the 706 form if that's what has to happen. If you want a referral, we could potentially get you a referral, point you in the direction of the accountant on the list so they can get that done. So you really need to kind of understand, like, I got the job, but this one person might not be the only one doing the job. Because you as the executor are going to have to interface with the lawyer who's been handled to get you appointed, the accountant who's potentially going to handle the M706 form.
That insurance guy who's ringing.
If there's financial policies involved, and then you have to deal with the financial advisor. Because where's the money? List. The money's at Fidelity, the money's at Vanguard, the money's at T. Rowe Price, money's at Charles Schwab. You need to so you when you get the job as the executor, then you have other people that you need to bring in. So you kind of need to figure out whose job is what, who's going to handle what, who's doing what, and if that's unclear, then things can drag.
Well, and they drag, and you say it's 9 months. 9 months is fast.
Well, 9 months is fast because most folks don't really respond quickly to certain things. And we've talked about this on the show before, especially when there's real estate involved, right? So you get a piece of real estate that's got some wealth behind it, big Cape Place down on the water, place in New Hampshire on the water. That because you have the keys and you have access to the beach sticker and you have access to the property and you can do all those things, there doesn't feel like there's any urgency to these things, right? And then when there's no urgency, you drag your feet.
Because it's hard. And then and the other part of it is if you're not familiar with what you're doing, if you're not like, the Cape House one thing, but what if it's like commercial property? What if it's like commercial property in downtown Needham?
That's right.
And you're like, I don't know I don't know who to talk to. I don't know.
I wonder if it's a really unique piece of property that has like certain attributes that are going to say to yourself, this isn't going to be an easy sell, right? Or if it was a property that was used for a certain function where people are concerned about the environmental impacts of the property, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things that can slow this process down. And when that process gets slowed down like that, and that 9 month window is hanging out there, people get concerned about, how do I come up with the money to pay if there's going to be a tax bill? How do I come up with it?
Yeah, because again, just like in your regular taxes, it's not like, I mean, if you owe the taxes, you have to pay it, right?
Yeah.
You have to pay it, and I'm sure there's got to be some way in some circumstances they'll allow you to kind of extend the
Right, file an
payment, right?
extension, stuff
To
like
file
that.
an extension for the, particularly if you're talking about something like you're saying, like a piece of property or unique property that's like, oh well, I can't sell this property, I can't, get it if that's all there is. If it's a $5 million piece of property that's valued at $5 million, but there's no liquidity involved, there's still an estate tax
Right.
that's got or a state estate tax that has to be paid on it. Where's that money coming from?
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right.
And
you may have to go get a loan, line of credit, equity line, something like that to be able to handle some of these things, and that takes time.
and all these things, right? Because then you got to go to the bank, and the bank's like, ooh, I don't know, let's take a look at it,
Well,
right?
and that's exactly right. You walk into a bank with a question like that, and yeah, we make loans all the time, and then you start feeding them the details of the loan. Well, you're going to be making a loan to an estate on the exact. Whoa, hold on. There's no drop down box for that
Yeah.
part on our application. This needs to go to a special processing department. And by the way, things happen super slow over there for all these reasons.
Yeah, or they tell you go find a different bank,
Yeah.
and then you end up shopping for banks in order to. So the point is that the 9 months, once that clock starts, there's a lot to do, and you got to get after it. You really do, especially if you're dealing with, if the last person you talked to was the finance guy, right? You talk to the lawyer, and the lawyer's like, yeah, you find out how much money you got, and oh, by the way, you're the executor, good to go. And then, of course, the lawyer, if you want us to help you with this, that's a different story. Here, come and sit in my office.
Right, you got to find out who's going to do who's doing what job. Is the lawyer doing it? Are you getting referred out to somebody? Do you have your own tax people? Like it needs to be crystal clear who all the players are and who's doing what by when.
But once you find out exactly what the size of the estate is that you're talking about, then it's like, wow, I'm going to be over the exemption limit, so I'm going to have to. There's going to be there's some estate tax that has to happen.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, let's take another quick break. We'll be right back. We'll go back in a little more detail on this, and then we'll do like a little review of just some of the because I like this. I like the fact that we talk about executive. We talk about this because people we will throw it out there and be like, oh yeah, you have to do this. Be like, wait, what is that again? Because
it's not if, it's when. Unfortunately, in our business.
Yeah, it's when, and when happens.
What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? Yeah.
There you go. You know who to call. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
And you're back. My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John Drohan, Main Effort Financial.
You're an Intervivos.
Intervivos. Tom on the bag, and here in the My FM studio.
Here's another thing I learned about.
Okay, here we go.
Here's another thing I learned that which I found. Again, being I'm part of like the girl power world,
You
like
and me
right,
both. Girl dad, yep.
So right, so what I found interesting is that if I'm a female executor, what could I be referred to as?
Executrix.
Executrix.
Testatrix.
The executrix, where you're like, wow, does it have to be that way?
Well, it's not that way anymore.
I was going to say
The current nomenclature is personal representative.
Personal, right? For all the right reasons.
But it's funny. You look at some of these old filings, and that you would have to cross out. It would say executor, executrix. So you had to cross out the one you weren't using. So you had to go through, and there was like this whole gender vibe to your documents. It was pretty interesting.
So back in the day, they had to distinguish if you were an right? Because I'm sure the executrix got the same amount of respect and exactly the same as the executor, right?
In a courtroom here in Massachusetts in 1950. Absolutely right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you're calling perhaps another attorney, and you're saying I'm the executrix, and they're like, ha ha, we'll take care, right?
Yep. Hold on. Yep.
Hold on. Yeah. We're going to put you on hold.
Call my girl. Make an appointment. Yep.
It's terrible.
That's right.
It's terrible.
It is terrible.
So
no
personal
longer,
representative.
Personal representative across the board. Across the board.
I like that.
Yep.
That makes things better.
But it's funny. It is funny. But these are the things, like, people get these things kind of stuck in their head, right? People are used to hearing certain things, so people come in all the time. We hear executor. It's the common parlance that people are familiar with, right? And but yes. So this is what when something like this happens and you have to get that job. That's what you're doing. You're getting yourself appointed as the personal representative of someone's estate to then be able to go out and collect all this stuff. So you've got the gross estate, that's what you're going to pay taxes on. You've got the probate estate, which is what has to actually go through probate. And just because you have an estate doesn't mean you have a probate estate. You might not have a probate estate.
Right, and if you've done things, if you were smart about things,
Sure.
or you're kind of ahead of the game, we talk about this all the time about how you'd like to limit the stuff that has to go through probate because of all of the things that happen with probate, because it's
just
public.
It's a long, drawn out process. It can really, and sometimes you just can't avoid it. But I mean, we try to tell people, look, if we can get probate avoided on as much of the big stuff as possible, and if at the end of the day the probate breaks down to just like a car, that's fine.
That's easy.
That's easy. We can live with that. That's
the commercial
not a big deal.
property in Needham, that's a different animal. Right?
That's different stuff. That's a different animal. And that stuff doesn't move quick. And we've talked about this on the show. And if you inherit a beach house, okay, you got the keys to the beach house, you have the ability to, but you still got to have you're still going to get a property tax bill. You're still going to get a gas bill, an electric bill.
There may be a loan still on it,
right?
right?
A loan still on it. That comes up all the time. Who makes these payments? Well, what happens if I don't make them? Well, what would happen in the real world? Because we're in the real world. What happens when you don't make those payments? When it comes to real estate, if there's payments that need to be made on a mortgage, you might be able to fend them off a little bit. We'll tell people, if there's really nobody willing to step up and write a $2,800 mortgage check every month.
And there's not a lot of them.
And that's right. I mean, you get your own mortgage to worry about. In many cases, it's the biggest bill. You're right. You add two of those, and you weren't expecting it. And so now people will ask all the time, well, how long will they take no for an answer? And I said, not long.
Not long.
Because remember, all of a sudden they hear the person who was responsible for the mortgage is not around anymore. You're telling me that you're working on some stuff, but it doesn't feel like you're working on some stuff. And even if you are working on some stuff, a lot of these, especially in the case of reverse mortgages, these are where we hear most of the horror stories, where somebody says, my parents, my mother, my father had a reverse mortgage on the house. They passed away. We were so overcome with grief for all the right reasons. We dragged our feet on getting anything done. And the reverse mortgage is looking to get the money that they want to recover as part of their deal.
Yeah, because they're not, and most likely they're not getting paid. Now it's one thing if they're getting their monthly check and they're getting paid, then they're like, great, we'll work with you as best we can. But if you're not getting paid,
well, and on the reverse, that you have a year to pay off that mortgage, a year from the death of the person who had the reverse mortgage.
1 year.
Years, it can be a long time, but to your point, if there's a family dynamic, if everybody's sitting around for 6 months and then there's some negotiation about who's going to buy who out, and in reality, that's probably not going to really happen, but you kind of live this little fantasy for 6 months until that kind of goes away. And then you're fighting over who should be the executor. So you sneak up on that 1 year window. And once that year comes and nobody's made the move to be able to do something with the house to pay the reverse mortgage people, it is off to foreclosure.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If there's no liquidity to kind of do this, and oh, by the way, what we were talking about in the beginning of the show, what if there's a Massachusetts estate tax that's required as part of this, right? Because just because you owe money on a reverse mortgage doesn't mean that you're necessarily like out of if your house is worth $5 million and you owe money on a reverse mortgage, guess what?
Yeah.
You're paying estate tax.
Yeah.
And that's due. The mortgage is due. And like you said, and as we talked about with the family dynamic of, especially if they're not ready for it or they haven't thought about it or there hasn't been planning for it, now you're stuck.
Yeah.
You're stuck, and you could find yourself in a situation where if people are in different financial situations in this family dynamic, you're like, look, we all need to come up with $10,000 like today.
Yeah.
And in order to pay for X, Y, and Z, because dad, kept $100 in the bank account, and that's all he did, and he paid his bills at the mailbox. Other than that, they have no cash.
Or all their wealth was tied up in real estate. That's not unusual. People come in and say, look, I don't have a ton of liquidity because my plan is this. I own this, series of either commercial or residential properties, and I'm just going to sell these things off one at a time when I'm ready, and that's going to fund my retirement. I bought 10 multifamilies, and I'm just going to sell these things one at a time, and they don't get around to it. And then you have all these bills, all these expenses, all these costs, and zero cash to make it happen. It becomes a real challenge.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is, this is the idea of being somebody's personal representative. This is all about the ability to do stuff. Same as the trustee on somebody's trust. It's just the ability to do the same exact things that you would do if you were here.
The
That's
same-
what it's all about.
Or the same as not unlike a durable power of attorney to
Yeah.
be able to
Yep.
to be able to do these legal things, right?
Yep.
To be able to talk about assets or move assets or things like that. It's so important because if you can't do that, then everything's kind of sitting in the water and collecting interest or bills are racking up.
Well, and for everybody who's listening to the show, right? Sit down at some point, right? It's February. You're not out mowing the lawn, right? Make it like do an inventory. Pretend you were your own executor.
yeah.
Pretend you were your own
Easy.
executor, and go down the list of stuff that you have, and then look at it and say, okay, if I had to go out and start moving all this stuff around and consolidating all this stuff, what would it look like?
Yeah.
What would I have to do, right? And then all of a sudden, you'll realize this is a lot of work for somebody.
Yeah.
How do I make this less work for somebody?
Yeah.
What do I do?
And the other important thing. So if you're doing this, right, and let's say you're married or you're married.
Yep.
So if it's not like you have to. The estate tax doesn't happen when one person passes away. This is this is all second to die stuff, right?
Yep.
So at this point, sit down and do it and say, here's all our stuff. Here's what we have. Understanding that it's not like if the first person goes, the second person goes, right?
Right. That's right.
It's after the second person. So you can do this understanding that, if I, get hit by a piece of Skylab tomorrow, my wife's not going to have to like stress out about this.
Yep.
I mean, there's going to be plenty of other things to stress out about. Although it was brought to my attention I told you I wasn't home last night. I was at a sleep study I had to do, right? And she's like, you know what? You always tell me all the jobs that you do, right? You're always saying, oh, you take the dog out, you trash and all that. She goes, I did all that last night. And I also made the coffee in the morning, and it wasn't that hard.
Wasn't that much work.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
she
it
figured
took
out. Yeah,
it took me a lot.
You made the mistake. You made the mistake. You made the big mistake.
It took me a lot less time than it takes you. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, I do it every day, Yeah, so
I had a buddy 100.
my stock went down.
I had a buddy 100 years ago that filled in for a bartender one night, and the bartender he was filling in for was showing him how everything works, and he kind of said to him at the end of the night, training was over, and he goes, and by the way, the end of the night, this is how much money that you put in your pocket. What do you mean? It doesn't say. He goes, no, this is how much money you put in your pocket. Because if you don't put that money in the pocket, it's going to look different than it is on the nights that I'm here. And so this is how it works. This is
how we
what
do it.
you have to do. So everybody has to be on the same page, right? So this would happen. You gave up the ghost. That's it. All of a sudden, the cat's out of the bag, right?
I know.
Yep.
Wow, coffee doesn't take 45 minutes to make. It's weird. No, it's a slow drip.
Yep.
Slow drip coffee.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
French press? That's right. That's the problem, yeah.
You got to push it slow.
Gotta go slow.
Yeah.
Long time.
You got to walk away from
Make
it.
it pure.
You got to leave it, walk away.
Make it pure. So this is the idea. The idea is that you are trying to get a handle on where everything is and what the numbers look like and who's going to be doing what. Is the estate people just their estate job? Do I have to go find an accountant? What goes on here? That's all going to be kind of pulled together, and then you've got a window of time where that kind of needs to get figured out. And that money, to your point in the beginning, that money comes from usually the estate. When the people who get the money from the estate get the money,
then they get the bill.
It's free money. It's not income to them. The bill should have already been paid by the time they get it.
Right, and that's an important thing to understand as well. Kind of in this is just because we get this all the time.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, I'm inherited money. I don't want to, like I just inherited money. Like my father's house got sold, and I got $350,000. I bet I'm going to hang on to that because I'm thinking about taxes." And you're like, "No, there's no income tax for that, right?"
No, there is no inheritance tax because you inherited money.
Because you inherited money.
It is free money.
So that's important to understand. The estate tax and inheritance. There's no you're not getting taxed on the inheritance. What the tax that could come is what we were talking about today is the estate tax. Primarily
Correct.
the Massachusetts estate tax. So yeah, if you and your brothers and sisters are talking about like your parents' estate, and you all have inherited, it's all been kind of divvied up and you've inherited money, one of the things you need to make sure that you take into consideration before everybody goes their separate ways is if we have an estate tax, let's deal with that first instead of having to go back to the well and say, hey, oh, by the way, we need another 30 grand out because knowing like your brother or sister, that money may be already spent before that gets rectified.
Yeah. So, and that's how you kind of wrap your head around all this. And people who do get money from you, they're not going to pay taxes because they got it. Down the road, whatever that money earns, that's going to pay taxes. And as part of this discussion around avoiding estate tax and things like that, there's a whole nother set of conversations around whether or not people should get gifted money or should they inherit money. And there are situations where inheriting money might make more sense than getting it gifted, and paying the estate tax might be a better deal than giving it to them now. That's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, and I guess kind of the big takeaway from this is it feels complicated. It feels like there's kind of a good amount of moving parts. It's not beyond comprehension,
No.
right?
You
It's
can-
doable.
It can be explained to you and you'll understand it.
It can be explained to you. You'll understand it. It's really helpful if you have some help. If you have somebody who's can kind of be like, hey, look, here's what you need to do, and kind of frame it up for
Just
you.
navigate this
just
thing a
like
little bit.
anything
Yep.
else, right?
Yep.
If you're making chicken fajitas and you got Rachel Ray sitting there saying, look, no, don't do that. Just do this A, B, C, and D, square it up. This is where you cook it. This is how long you're cooking it done. It's going to taste pretty good.
You'll do all right.
It's going to do all right. All right. So we're going to leave you with that. We'll see everybody next time. Try and stay warm. Start thinking about, kind of January's behind us. Get sort of like we
Spring
said,
catalogs
it's in
are
the
going to be
books.
out pretty soon for stuff. It's going to almost be
Spring-
here.
What's spring catalog?
You're gonna
like
get
the
seed-
Macy's
You're going to get
catalog.
seed catalogs in the mail. You're going to get, you're going to get
like the spring
the Yellow
wardrobe.
Bean's going to come out. It's going to not be, Parker's anymore. It's going to be flip-flops.
Jay's got
and,
there's some Key West
One move
catalogs.
ahead, baby.
There's
One move ahead.
There's some Key West catalogs that they come out like December 26th.
It's always the same clothes. Doesn't matter.
That's
always- it's the
what is
same
this?
golf shirts or flip-flops.
James Buffett. Yeah.
Yep. That's
All
right.
right. We'll see everybody next time on Money and Law. Be good.
Have a great week, everybody.